Hello, everyone. We're joining this episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast already in progress. We're talking to Lucas Valente this week, and right now we're talking to him about the COVID-19 restrictions on his training. Listen in. Nobody wants to do harm, right?
Yeah. But I mean, but at the same time, it's my job and I got to train. So
yeah, exactly. You're in a very different situation than 99% of other people in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So
yeah. I mean, if I wasn't a professional competitor, I'll most likely just be watching the videos and like maybe get one partner that I really trust and train with that person.
Yeah.
Like when the lockdown started, was like, honest, I had just fought Houston Open, so I won the lightweight, and that was a Sunday. And then on Friday, I was supposed to have a super fight against Jonathan Torres, right? And then on the weekend after that was Pan Am's, and then the 2 following weekends I was scheduled for seminars in Colorado. So it was a pretty busy month. And then suddenly on Wednesday night is when I got the first update saying, hey, so your fight with JT is canceled. And I was like, and I got crazy, like, man, you kidding me? Like I've been training for the fight for like specifically for the fight for 3 months, and now it's canceled, and then whatever. And then they find another opponent that would have to travel. And I was like, okay, we're good. And they canceled that fight too on, honestly, it was like 12 hours notice.
Man, no kidding. That's crazy.
Yeah. And then Drac is really close friends with CDM, the CEO of IBJJF, right? So Drac gave me a call on Saturday and said, hey, I hate to tell you, but I just talked to CDM and Pan Am's going to be canceled. But wasn't anything official yet. So at the time I was like in denial, I was like, no, that's bullshit. It's not gonna, like, you kidding me? They're gonna cancel Pan American. And then the rumors start going to the internet. And anyways, they cancel, and then they cancel of course, the seminars too. So like one day I had all those big things to do in a month, and then suddenly everything disappeared. I didn't have any date for anything anymore. I didn't have any close short-term goal anymore, because people are like, oh, this is going to take a month. And then people are like, oh, this is going to go until 2021. And I was like, man, I'll get insane, like I'm really a goal-oriented person, like my whole life goes around jiu-jitsu, everything I do. And then suddenly you say that it's not going to, pretty much I'm not going to have anything to fight for. Like you don't have a date for it, And then like my plan was just the same day I kind of gave like a 10-minute silence to let things sink in. And then I told Andres, I was like, hey, so let's make a plan, like a routine that we're going to follow during this quarantine thing. Like, let's not even think about it. Let's wake up, get the job done, and that's it. Because if you wake up like at any time without a routine, let's suppose you wake up at like noon, because don't have time to wake up at noon and be like, okay, let me see what I'm gonna do. Oh, but I don't have any tournament coming up, so let me just stay here and watch TV. Like you're not gonna do anything, at least not the way you should. So like I was like, let's not overthink. Let's just make this plan, and every day wake up and we do this. The goal is to come out of this quarantine better than when you started.
So you are in a really particular environment because you are living and training with your wife, Andressa, who also has some series on BJJ Fanatics, also an incredible black belt. Do you feel like you came out of quarantine better than when you started? Do you feel like that paid off?
100%.
In which ways, do you think? Just all around, or is there like...
Man, honestly, in every way. Man, without having to I mean, when you compete, when you're traveling and competing, you're improving in different ways. but it's not the same thing as you actually going back to the lab or the mat, the gym, and studying things and understanding things and getting better at things, like drilling, training, doing specific rollings kind of stuff. So I believe that quarantine gave me more time to study the art. I like to study jiu-jitsu a lot, and so there was a time that I wasn't teaching, I wasn't traveling, I wasn't competing, I wasn't teaching seminars or anything like that. So I had all that time to simply improve myself.
How did you go about doing that? Was it a lot of specific sparring, positional sparring? Was it a lot of drilling? How did you go about studying when you had something that you definitely wanted to get better at?
So I'm not such a big drilling guy, That was never something that really worked for me. I was always able to see a technique. I was always I feel blessed that way, because I can see a technique and already implement into my game and understand it. So I felt like drilling the same technique a lot on my case would be not wasting time, but I could be using that time to do something better.
Mm-hmm.
So I drill a technique until I really understand the mechanics of it, until I get my body right. And then I try to apply doing a specific.
That makes a lot of sense. Is there anything in particular that you feel like you definitely improved at during this time?
Technique
you don't have to
wise.
give away like your game plan or anything, but like what kind of things were you working?
So man, it was long, it was like 3 months. So if I would say something, if I would split it to my mind, I would say that 1 month I improved my guard, the second month I improved my passing, and the third month I improved my stand-up game.
Man, awesome. Incredible. Is that something in your normal training that you try to split up, spending even time on your guard, on your passing, and on your stand-up, or does it kind of change around?
Man, it change around depending on what I'm feeling needs more improvement at that time. Depend also on my goals, depending also on my strategy for a certain tournament or for a certain fight, and then I would focus on one more than the other. But I definitely do all of them. And I learned that with my master Draculino, that specific sparring is one of the best ways to improve and get technical,
You mentioned Professor Draculino. This is somebody that obviously during quarantine and during these lockdowns, you didn't have nearly as much contact with. How were you getting the answers when you couldn't find them yourself in any given position? Was it just communicating between you and Andressa, or would you call up Draculino and start asking him questions? How did you gain this new information?
Joey, I feel like so lucky to be surrounded by such great people, to be, I would say I have a handful of great mentors that teach me not just jiu-jitsu, but all aspects of life, but those people are from jiu-jitsu. And some people I grew up watching, and some people I grew up with. So me and Andressa, we were always brainstorming situations, brainstorming techniques, and then I would always get a hold of Drac. He's kind of like my adopted father, so we're extremely close. So he would always help me with that. I have a really close relationship with Romulo Barral also. He's definitely one of my mentors, one of the guys I look up to, that always help me, not just technique wise, but on everything. Sometimes I just have a question about something, or I just have I need a pep talk, whatever, and I message him, as well as Braulio. Estima. And so I
Good
feel
place.
like I'm is
Pretty
what?
good for champions.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm well surrounded by those people. And during quarantine, even though we couldn't be physically together, man, I feel like the connection between me, my friends, and my teammates, they actually grew. Because sometimes you're just on the grind so hard. You're just like training 3-4 times a day, and then it's a week, and then you travel, you go compete, and then you're back, and then you train again, and then you travel again for whatever reason. And so sometimes it's hard to like, hey, how are things with you?
Yeah.
Like how is life going? It's just like porrada. And I think quarantine gave us a chance to also deepen their relationship.
So you mentioned that there's certain things that during the quarantine you can slow down, you can focus, you can study a little bit more on some positions, but then you also mentioned that there's some things you can only learn in the porrada, right? In the grind, competing
Yes.
all the time and doing that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what are some things that you feel like competing often has helped you with or taught you?
Joey, so I think definitely mental toughness is one of them. And of course you can learn. I believe mental toughness you can learn in everything.
Can I ask you a question real quick? What do you
Yes,
mean by mental toughness? Do you mean
mental
like the ability like to overcome, the ability to like not let things bother you? Like I just want to be clear because you're such an elite competitor. When you think of mental toughness, what does that mean to you?
the groupment of all of those things you said. So resilience. So when you want to give up, you don't. How to overcome adversity, overcome obstacles. Uh, have a positive mind. That's something that is especially during quarantine. It was hard for people to keep a positive mindset. But I feel like that something is important. So I think you can improve all those things even on small daily tasks. Like that might sound funny, but I really feel that's something that can make you improve. So for example, you go to the grocery stores, and you don't want to make 2 trips to the car to take the groceries home. Like, no, I'm just gonna take all at once. Even though your arms are falling down, your fingers are purple because you're holding the heavy bags, but and then you just do it. So small things like that. And but of course, doing the grind, doing traveling and competing a lot, you're gonna encounter bigger versions of those opportunities. And in fight especially, you're fighting, you're tired, you're on the 4th match of the day, let's suppose you didn't submit any of them, or so you're getting tired, so your goal is to win, and go there to win. Doesn't matter what your mind tells you, it doesn't matter if your body's tired or anything like that. And I mean, just how work in general, you coming back from a trip and training and teaching the whole week, and then traveling again to compete again, and then like help your teammates improve as well, and all those things. I feel like everything, if you have a positive mind and you know where to look, everything can be an opportunity for growth in your career.
You mentioned that you teach, and you mentioned, helping out with people. Are you somebody that's pretty active in your academy about making sure you're helping others, or are you, as a competitor, really just trying to make sure that you are getting the training you need? How are you splitting being a member of the academy and a competitor for the academy?
George, so I think my Drac was the biggest example of all in that matter, and I think he passed that to pretty much all his students. Me, of course, and Romulo, Serginho, Caloquinha, that teaching Grace Bar BH. And I mean, you can pretty much see the majority of the active Draculino black belts, they teach and compete Felipe Pena, Gabriel Arges now is has his own gym, so I don't teach a lot, so I think Drac was able to manage the schedule in a way that is very well split, because I mean, as I told you, everything is the opportunity for me to grow. So even teaching, helps me learn a lot and get better and understand techniques better, understand the mechanics of it. So I don't teach a lot, but I love doing it, and I really put a lot of focus on it. But helping people on the mat there, it's something that I do. But when I'm training, I literally try to focus just on myself.
Gotcha.
Enjoy, like, I can even be very hard on my teammates sometimes, in a matter of, like, if you ask me for help, I will most likely help you as long as you give your best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something you can definitely, like, ask Andressa, because she see me doing all the time. If you ask me for help, you're my teammate, and you're like, hey, Professor, I want to get better, I want to improve. And I was like, okay, I will help you, but you got to show me that you really want to. Like, no excuses, no like, hey, I want to show up to training today, I got to do this, I'll see you tomorrow. Like, hey, I'm going to be there no matter what.
Is that what guys like Hamelo did with you when you were a younger kid on the mat?
Yeah. I mean, all the guys in BH did that to me.
Gotcha.
Oh, and that's something that I always appreciated.
Gotcha. And so that's just the culture that you're kind of putting forward.
That. So awesome. Like, if you are just doing, you like to train jiu-jitsu twice a week, and it's come like, hey, professor, can you help me on this? Probably I want help, not because I think I'm better, or because I'm sorry, or because I want to be mean or anything like that. But we only have a limited amount of time, and I need to use my time to improve myself, mm-hmm. as a competitor, as a person, and overall. So I rather save that time to improve who really wants that, who really wants to make a living out of that.
I hear you. I would like to, you were talking about yourself as a teacher. I think you're a great teacher. I've seen both of your series available now, BJJ Fanatics. I think they're both really good. And I'd like to talk about them for a minute and talk about your guard. First question, has your guard been passed since the last time you told everybody it hasn't been passed since 2012?
Thanks God, no.
Still no? Oh, it's still. Watching you compete, your guard is just never getting passed. Your open guard is amazing. And your series now on BJJ Fanatics are the classic open guard and the Encyclopedia of Guard Retention. So this is a great chance for me to talk to you, because I think you are achieving in a very important jiu-jitsu position, the guard, maybe better than anybody else, or at least you're up there with the elite. And I want to figure out what you are doing differently. First question, when did you start playing guard, and who was helping you learn at the beginning?
So I started playing since I was a kid. It was just something that came naturally to me, especially because I went from the kids program at Gracie Barra Belo Horizonte to the adults program when I was 12. Yeah, so when I say the adults program, I don't mean like fundamentals. I mean like where the black belts are training. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I'm not stronger than them, I'm not faster than them. I mean, I'm growing. So I had to get good in guard and to be technical, because I was literally smaller than everybody and less weaker than everybody. Of course I was a kid. So that's something that just came naturally, So to be honest with you, Joe, like, people say, hey, so your guard haven't been passing this amount of time or that amount of time. That's just something that happened by coincidence. That was never my goal. Like, oh, my goal is to not have my guard pass for like 10 years or something like that. No, that's never my goal. And I don't even think about it. I don't say my guard is impassable, can happen one day. I really hope it doesn't, but I mean, it's just something that ended up happening because of the fact that I play guard and I like to study it. And I think I was able to learn the concepts of it really well throughout the years. And of course, my first inspirations were my uncle. He's one of the first generations of a Draculinos black belt. So when I started training, he was already a black belt, and he's really good in De La Riva. So I learned that with him. Of course, my master, Draculino, was one of the guys that made the Spar de Guard famous back in the late 80s or early 90s. And, like my professor, Marcelo Irapuru, my professor, Sergio Benini, Professor Caloquinha, just all of them amazing guard players. And Romulo, of course, Samuel Braga. So, I mean, it was just watching them. I was like, okay, so they're doing the position that and I was seeing that as a kid, of course. So I like to be in this position, and those guys are doing really well in that position. So, I mean, let me just learn that,
It worked out pretty good. When you are in your guard, how much are you thinking about your defense and making sure that you keep a really, strong, smart guard versus taking risks and opening up? Because I feel like a lot of people from the open guard, maybe because the guard retention isn't as good, they don't feel like they can take the risks. You know what I mean? How do you manage offense and defense when you're in the open guard?
Yeah, Joe, so that's something that I got criticized a little bit when I was growing up. That's like, oh, like Lucas guard is people don't pass. It's hard to pass, but it's so defensive. But that was the way that was for me. So first I made a defensive guard, then I made it offensive.
When you said you were younger, how old are you talking about when people are saying like you just have a defensive guard?
Man, when I got my blue belt, I was 14.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time I had like a few really good attacks from guard, but nothing, not like a huge volume of things from there, but even so at the time, like black belts were having a hard time to deal with it kind of stuff. But and then I remember that one time somebody said that and Drac was close, and Drac would just went and say, hey, so that's how you develop a great guard.
With guard retention first and then attacks later. That's how you develop a good guard.
And when he said that, I was like, okay, so I'm on the right track. I'm doing the right thing. And as I said, like, that wasn't my intention, I was being defensive because, I was being defensive because I was training with adults, so I was something natural. So for me, naturally, I developed the defensive part first and then the offensive part. But by coincidence, by lucky, whatever, I was doing the right thing,
Man, awesome. Who are some people lately, like today, who give your guard the most trouble? Is it anybody? You're thinking deep here. Maybe nobody's giving your guard too much trouble.
Man, I would say,
like when you're training, I mean, not like necessarily like competing. I'm not asking you to like, But
man, I would tell you that the last training that I did that was insanely hard, and you can definitely tell why he's one of the best of all time. Is definitely Braulio.
I believe it.
Man, we did, I believe that day we did 20 minutes straight. Man, that day was hell. But
what made it so bad? The pressure, the pace, what was so difficult about training with Braulio that day?
Man, pressure, experience.
He's so creative too.
Yes. I feel like it could be a boring training for people to watch, because it wasn't much movement, let's say that way. But if you really understand jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu, there was like so many things going on at the same time. So many grip changes from both parts, and so many angle adjustment from both parts, you know. So that was definitely one of the most amazing trainings I've done lately.
Braulio's a really big guy. You traditionally fight at lightweight. You know, you've been on the world podium, excelled at the highest levels. Is the absolute division something that you would ever kind of think about? I see a couple of lighter guys try it out once in a while. Is that something that would ever interest you?
Joe, so I won a few open classes on IBJJF Opens as a black belt.
For sure. But I mean, you know, when you're talking about like, and that's impressive, obviously, but, you know, Euros, Worlds, Pans, anything like that where
yeah.
you
So
know.
one thing that I feel that it hurts for lightweights to fight open class on those tournaments is especially the fact that it's before the weight class.
True.
You know, so I think that's definitely something that makes a lot of people of the lighter people don't do it.
Would you switch that if you could?
I'm sorry?
Would you like that to be switched so that you had the option?
Oh yeah, that would be amazing. Because I mean, when you go to the tournament, my goal is I'm gonna win the lightweight. Right. So let's suppose you go to the open class first, and then you fight in ultra heavy. So let's suppose even if you beat it, you know, you beat the guy. Okay, good. And then you go against another guy that is also heavy, and let's suppose you beat the guy too. You know, but then you're so tired, if not hurt at that point. You know, you're so tired that that's definitely going to hurt your performance on your main goal, that is to win your weight class.
Do you feel like you have lightweight is such a difficult weight class anyway? You know, to me, people always talk about maybe like rooster weight or like the lightest weight classes being the most technical. I think for me, lightweight and middleweight are often the most technical because there's so many different styles, right? And so you're having to deal with so many different kinds of guys that, do you have an easier time in the gym when you go up against bigger guys, or in the absolute classes that you have one? Do you almost prefer to fight the bigger guys, or, you know?
Man, I've said that before. And I mean, I don't want people to understand that wrong. But just like you said, in my conception, the lightweight, the featherweight, lightweight, and middleweight are the hardest weight classes for sure. And the reason why is because I believe that at that point, you have people who are extremely technical, are people that are fast and strong. You know, I believe that when you go below that, I mean, of course, in general, you know, of course, there's like amazing strong guys at rooster weights kind of stuff. But in general, the guys are not as strong, you know, or maybe don't have that much isometric strength. And when you start going above the medium weight, then the guys are not that fast. They're not that technical or that flexible, you know, and one more time in general. So I really believe that those three classes are the most technical. So when I train with big guys, you know, it's definitely a training I like to train with big guys a lot. But I like to do it, I believe every time you fight a bigger guy, you might need a little more time.
Gotcha. But it's still going to be mostly the same strategy?
Man, I believe so.
Still pull a guard. What about if you fight somebody like smaller? What if you got matched up with a really good rooster weight or light featherweight or something? Is that going to change your strategy any?
So actually, Joey, let me correct that. So to be honest, with heavier guys, I would say that their goal would be to keep them away. Gotcha. So foot on the hip or spy the guard, and to somebody lighter would actually bring them in.
And that would be, what kind of guard would you talk about bringing them in with? Maybe like a closed guard or something?
A closed guard, I think it's a beautiful guard, lasso guard, whatever guard that you avoid them from moving too much.
Gotcha.
You know, and on the heavy side, of course, you want to avoid them from putting the weight on you. So
obviously. So I want to talk about your open guard now, because we talked about your guard retention and man, I feel like I learned so much. I feel like I have stuff I want to go write down. So when it comes to your open guard, I feel like I see a lot of people who specialize in maybe only one style of the open guard, like they only do the spider guard or they only do the lasso guard. And a lot of people, this is, they've won world championships, is amazing. I feel like you play a lot of different kinds of open guard. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Why is that? Why not pick one, like spider guard, for example, with your professor was an amazing spider guard player. Why not just pick one and specialize in it? Why be so diverse?
Joey, that's a hard question, but that's something that when people come to me and say, hey, Lucas, why do you think your guard is good? And one of the reasons, there are a couple other, but one of the reasons I think is because I can play a lot of types of open guard. And I mean, it's a tricky thing, because I do believe you should focus a lot on one major style, the style you like the best, the style that you are better at. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, man, jiu-jitsu is so vast. It's so, you can tell just by BJJ Fanatics and the numbers of like amazing DVDs, you see them all, you're like, man, how can I learn all of that? But man, I think guard is so vast and so amazing that I feel that I wouldn't want to play just one type.
So it's almost like a personality choice as much as a technical choice.
And also the way that I learn, man, I have like so many influences on different ways. Like I literally grew up surrounded by greatness, and all that greatness, each one playing different type of thing. So I had my master Draculino, of course. He's besides all the other guys, amazing at his, he's known for the spider, amazing at a spider. And then we've seen Romulo with the variation of it, going with the hand on the collar. And then Samuel Braga with the burn bull. And then my professor Sergio, amazing at omoplata. My professor Marcelo, amazing on triangles. So my professor Coloquinha also getting inverted a lot to attack the legs and kind of stuff. So I believe that I like a sponge, I kind of absorbed a little bit of all of them and kind of created my style.
That makes so much sense. You mentioned a minute ago there are reasons why your guard is so good, and that is one of them. And I think that's really important. And you show a lot of this in your classic open guard series. If people want to find it, they can go to bjjfanatics.com. They can also go to the notes for wherever they're listening to this show, and they'll be linked there. So everybody, you can just scroll there. What are some other reasons you believe your guard is so elite?
I can play for both sides.
Interesting. Tell me about that. Because most people pull to one side, and it's mostly the right side, right?
I believe that's a huge difference. And so just like you just said, a lot of people, man, I've seen some elite black belts. They're amazing guard players. But then you put them on their bad side, they're like white belt first day. Mm-hmm. They can even control their legs when they're trying to recover, and it's kind of stuff. And one more time, Joe, I don't really remember like the day, like, okay, let me try to play guard for both sides. I think it was just something that was slowly introduced to me by my professors. Just like, hey, just drill everything for both sides. Okay, you play this side now play the other. Wasn't really thinking, okay, let me get good on both sides. And the reason, I believe it's the same as the reason why I play various different styles of open guard. Like, you get somebody who passes really well De La Riva, but does that person pass De La Riva really well to the opposite side, or does that person pass Classic Open as well as they pass De La Riva, and when you get like those things figured out, you can really adjust your game. you know? So it's not like you're trying to focus on your opponent. But let's suppose if I'm going to fight you, Joey, and let's suppose you're really good on
Please don't.
no, but let's suppose you're really good on passing classic open. But I noticed that you only pass your right side.
Right.
And if I'm good on both sides, I'm just going to play classic open to the left.
Man, I was about to ask that. So you are not just letting them choose the side, you're choosing the side that you're going to play for them.
Exactly. You know, so like I'm not changing my game at all. I'm just going to a different path towards my own game.
I know you're somebody that said that, you know, earlier you said that drilling is not really your thing. You much more prefer like situational sparring and all that. So does that mean that you were situationally sparring one way and then you were situationally sparring the other way?
Yes, I always do that.
Man, interesting. I've never really heard of people situationally sparring both sides, but I don't know why more people don't do it now that I think about it. Seems like
man, it was just Draco always said that, and actually he learned that from his master Carlinhos, you know, and then he told me that story when I was growing up, and I absorbed that. He was like, one day I was training, you know, that's him saying, you know, it's like one day I was training at Gracie Barra, the headquarters in Rio. I was a brown belt. I was doing really well. And when finished training, Master Carlinhos looking at me, I was like, hey, so you only do the stuff to your right side, huh, champ? Why don't you try everything to the left now? And that's when he started doing things to the left side. So for me, I didn't have a starting point like this. You know, it was, I think, Drac, he unconscious by me. I mean, I wasn't conscious of it. He introduced that to me, you know, just by, it's like, hey, do the other side now, you know?
Is that something that you try to pass along to the next generation? I know you talked about trying to make sure that you're giving the right culture down to like the next students that are coming up. Is that something else that you really try to hammer home to people?
Yeah, Joe. Because, so look, I understand people can be really blind on their bad side, you know, and I believe that's something that I got from my dad too. My dad is, I don't know how to say, ambidextrous.
Ambidextrous, yeah.
Yeah, ambidextrous, yes. So I think that's something I got from him. But so I tell people.
Are you also ambidextrous?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Wow, crazy.
So I tell people, hey, so you don't need to. I mean, I don't really know the definition of ambidextrous. If you can do both things with both hands, I can. But
yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, and then I tell people you don't need to have a twin. You know, your right side doesn't need to be exactly like your left side, but you need to have at least a decent bad side to bring the person back to your right.
That makes a lot of sense. And
I mean, majority of people, they are right-handed, right? So I tell them, okay, so you don't need to have an amazing left side, but you need to have a decent left side at least to bring the person back to your good side in case you end up there.
Man, amazing. And I know that this is a fantastic guard concept, and I know that you cover so many concepts in your open guard DVD that would just it makes a huge difference for so much. Some of your gripping details, some of your details about how to mess with their balance is really next level stuff, and I think it's something that everybody should check out. Lucas, something I want to talk to you about is your flexibility. You're a very flexible fighter. There's no doubt. Is this flexibility natural for you, or is this something that you've worked at over time?
Natural.
This is natural. This is something, man, you were born with flexibility. You were born, you understand the moves easy. Man, you got, you know, some good stuff going on.
But so a funny story about that is when I was 12, was actually the same time that I moved to the adults class. I noticed that every time I was walking, my knees were popping a lot. Were making noises, you know. So I talked to my mom, and then went to a doctor, you know, and to analyze, like, okay, so what's going on? Why when I walk everything pops? And then he made like a few tests on me. He was like, twisting my thumb, and he did the same thing to my mom, and I was confused, like, okay, so like, what does my mom has to do with that and kind of stuff? And then he was like, okay, so good news, you don't have anything, but you have an amazing flexibility that is genetic. Because your mom has the same thing. And trust me, I tried to footlock my mom before, it didn't work. You know, so and then after that I was like, okay, I'll just pop when I walk.
Does it still do that?
Oh yeah.
See, it does that for me, and I'm not even that flexible. So is that something, how much has that influenced or changed your game? That must have been you know, I've seen your fights. You being flexible is obviously a huge advantage.
Yeah, Joe. So a lot of people, when they ask about guard, they say, oh, so you got to be flexible. So my answer to that is no. I believe that would be the same answer if you ask, okay, so to be a guard passer, you need to be extremely strong. Mm-hmm. And the answer is still no. You know, but so it does help, just like strength helps when passing the guard. But it's not something mandatory, and it's something that is an add-on. You know, it's a plus. So, and that's something that I made really clear especially on the Encyclopedia of Guard Retention.
For sure. And I wanted to make sure I talked about it here.
You know, it's something I made clear. You don't need to be flexible or strong or have longer limbs or shorter limbs to do anything. You can always adapt things. And there are the core concepts of the positions that you should follow. You know, so I always tell people it's kind of like a recipe. You know, you want to cook something, you got a recipe, and they say, oh, add salt to taste or add pepper to taste. It's the same thing. Mm-hmm. You know, let's suppose you have four concepts. I'm just throwing a random number here. You have 4 concepts, and then you put the same emphasis on all of them. Okay. But let's suppose if you are, if you have a strong grip, you know, you might be able to put a little more emphasis on this one than on this one. Gotcha. You know what I mean? So you're just going to adjust the recipe to your body type, to your style.
I hear you. I think that's really interesting. So I know that people who are very strong that are also particularly good in doing well in jiu-jitsu, they talk about how, you know, when they pass the guard, they still are trying not to use their strength very much, especially in training, obviously, because they don't want to just use strength and be forgetting about the technique. Is that something that you would ever do with your flexibility? Like, even though you could be flexible and save yourself in a position with that, you know, try to use technique instead? Or
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the reason why is because I try to, also because of my focus of being a teacher in the future, you know, and that's something that one of the reasons why that I told you that teaching helps you improve in a bunch of aspects. That's definitely one of them. You know, if you simply show people on what you're good at or what you can do, like, that's not going to fit everybody. No, but if you show a technique and you put the concept and you teach the concepts of the technique, yes, people are not going to do exactly the same, but they're still going to do it.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
You know, so I mean, you can have, so just example here that people always like, oh, you got to be really flexible to do that. So berimbolo, you know, you don't necessarily need to be flexible to do berimbolo, but you just need to adapt. Of course, you don't want to do the type of berimbolo where you stay like upside down with the guy on top of you for like 5 minutes until you do something. You know, you want to do variations of it, but you can still do the berimbolo. Use the concepts, but adjusting to your style, to your game.
Man, I totally agree. And I think there's some great adjustments that you show in your classic open guard series that breaks into this, because you do show a little bit of berimbolo stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was really interesting the way that you were breaking down, just the ways that people can get around some of these certain things. I thought that was really good. Earlier, we've touched on a couple of different parts about what sets your guard apart from other people. Is there any major topic that you think we're missing? We talked about playing on both sides, playing a lot of different styles of guard, having a strong guard retention first. Is there anything else that you think is definitely important for people to know on open guard? Or what makes your open guard better than others instead?
Man, I believe that training the basics. That's something very cliche that a lot of people say it, and still a lot of people take for granted. But man, doing the basics will set you up for success on the later stages of on the advanced stage of it.
Mm-hmm.
So like I do side control specific training a lot, and the reason why is the point where you're able to disconnect the person from you, that's guard retention.
You're saying side control from bottom?
Yeah, side control from bottom, yes.
Mm-hmm.
The moment you're able to create that space and you need to bring your legs in, that would be very similar to when the person is getting close to passing.
Gotcha.
You're in the middle stage where you need to use the guard recovery at that point.
Man, that's really interesting. I never thought about how, it's kind of the same thing in reverse in a lot of ways.
So that's kind of that can be tricky to understand, but and so I do that a lot, and I do just basic arm bar from close guard, and then just basic hip escapes. That's something that I always do. I do as a warm up. I never take for granted. I think that's something that especially people coming up, they see guard players at the black belt level doing fancy stuff or just crazy spinning stuff, and they want to start doing that. So for example, blue belts. But man, blue belt is so crucial. It's the time you're really making your body like ready for your journey. You're building your body for it. You're getting good at. You already started to understand the body movements, the hip escape, the getting inverted type of thing. But then they're gonna go straight right away to the berimbolo. But they have problem applying a scissor sweep from close guard.
And you want them to throw all that out, make sure that these very simple, very basic moves, and then later on maybe they can have the success with the fancier things.
Exactly. I mean, I don't mean throw it all out, but definitely put more emphasis on the basics than on the more advanced stuff at that point.
Like you talked about with a recipe, you can have a little bit up here, but let's keep this up here.
Exactly. I mean, it's always good to understand from the beginning. When I say beginning, I mean like blue belt, not as soon as you like, okay, I know what that position is, but to get there, to be good at that, I need to be good at the basics first.
Right.
Joe, you have no idea. Like sometimes I go coach some of our students in tournaments, like blue belts kind of stuff, and I see those kids like going really hard for like berimbolo or lapel guard, and whenever the person take them out of that game, they get the guard pass really easy.
I believe it, yeah, because they lack those tools that you're talking about.
That, like those basic guard retention tools, those basics guard retention movements, like hip escaping, like bridging, creating space, framing,
Man, I totally agree. I think you've been very, very generous with your time today, Lucas, and I think we're almost at the end of our interview here. I want to give you a chance in a second to plug any sponsors that you might have. But first, I want to make sure everybody listening to this knows BJJFanatics.com. Lucas has two series up right now, like we mentioned, the Guard Retention Encyclopedia and the Classic Open Guard. This is a great chance to learn from one of those next generation black belts who has a really elite style at this, who has learned from legends before him, and who is able to break this down in a around like the new game that is existing and put it into today's terms. And I think it's they're both really, really good series. Lucas, I want to give you a chance right now to thank any or mention any sponsors or anything that you want to talk about. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Joey. Thanks so much for the kind words about the DVD. Thank you so much for the interview. So I want to give the shout out to my sponsors, the one that allow me to be here to fight for my dreams. Fighter's Choice, King's Kimonos, Fruits, Kinematic Nutrition, the Sanctuary Gym, V12, of course, Grace Bar, Texas, Grace Bar BH, my home, my Master Draculino, my uncle, Pete Buscano, Gustavo Dantas, man, so many people that helped me on my journey that I can't even mention them all, but you guys know you're all in my heart, and I appreciate everything.
I really appreciate you being here today, Lucas. I really, really thought it was a good interview. I appreciate you spending your time here.
Thanks so much, Joey.
Real quick, before you go, can I get you to say it was a huge honor for me?
Oh, yeah.
Please.
I'm here with Joey today. It's a huge honor for me.
Huge honor for me as well, Lucas. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.